Okay, so here we go with an update on the Buffalo rifle. This butt plate is fitted. It is polished, but in this high humid area in East Texas, you gotta probably keep it indoors in the air conditioning or buff it every day because it just doesn't stay shiny forever. But that's looking pretty good. Here's the trigger guard all polished out. Let me rotate this rifle a bit. And I rust blued this double set trigger assembly. I'm happy with that. And this barrel and tang have now been browned. And you can see some slight variations in color. Some of that is the lighting overhead. Actually, most of it's lighting overhead. But this came out pretty good too. Now, back in the old days, like I said, I think in an earlier episode on this thing, they would mix the chemicals themselves, and some of that stuff, like mercury, some of the salts that they used, were somewhat poisonous and could penetrate the skin and make you sick over time. And even with the Birchwood Casey Plum Brown that I used, you probably ought to wear rubber gloves or something. Now the way this stuff works is, for you guys that have never done this, it's really not hard. There's several ways. But in general, the metal needs to be very, very clean. No fingerprints, no oil on it of any kind. It needs to be smoothed out, like I said before, like with 400 grit sandpaper at least. If you want an even better finish, you can polish it. Then you heat the metal up. It needs to be at least 200 degrees. You can go hotter. It doesn't really matter. I usually try to get it around 250 degrees with a torch, like a MAP gas torch or a propane torch, and you just go back and forth and try to keep the heat even all the way up and down the barrel, which is not always an easy task, but you can always go back to areas that are lighter and heat that up a little more and then put a little bit more of it on there. And I'm telling you, it doesn't take much. You can have like a nose blow tissue and just soak a little bit of that into it and rub that on here, and it will instantly turn this metal brown. The trick is to get the color even all the way down the length of this 32-inch barrel. And like I say, with this light here, it's hard to tell, but this is pretty even. Now, back when they were doing this, the old gunsmiths, they would often take this to a stream or something and rinse it really, really well to get the chemicals out, and then dry it good, and then warm it up again, and they would take beeswax and rub beeswax into this metal surface. And when you do that, you get more or less a dark chocolate brown. It's kind of sort of blackish brown when you do that. And some people would use a different kind of wax, like a carnauba. And with that, you only need to warm the barrel slightly. And then other folks would use either linseed oil or tung oil or some kind of wood finish oil and rub that in, and that's what this is right here. This is Homer Formby's tung oil finish, and it's the low gloss version of it. I don't like, on a hunting rifle, I don't like real shiny stuff, so that's what this has got on it. Personally, I think it came out pretty good. Even this wedding band right here is looking pretty good. And I may put, of course, in this light with this camera, colors and stuff kind of get distorted. But you can see this transition right here, I think. This is a transition from an octagon to 16-sided barrel. And then there's a what they call a wedding band here, and then it's tapered around all the way to the muzzle, just like that. Okay, here is that cast pewter 4-inch cap. It's not finished still. It hasn't been polished, but the reason it's not finished is because I haven't finished. I always had trouble finishing this wood here. Now this is sanded and everything, but because I still do not have a scope on this thing, I haven't set the comb height. Now I ordered mounts for this thing. I ordered 2 mounts, and what do you know? They didn't have 2 mounts. They sent me 1, and they included a note saying that by the end of the week I should have the other one. So these are Unertl and or old Lyman style mounts. This is an 11 millimeter mount. Some people call it a 3/8 mount. It comes with 2 6/48 screws. Whoa, there we go. Let's see if it'll. It's not coming out real clear, but they're pretty small screws, but real fine thread, so it should hold fine. Now, like I say, it takes 2 of these, and that scope was supposed to have been here Saturday. Today's Monday morning. Normally I post on Sundays, but because of Father's Day, that didn't happen. Anyway, as soon as this other mount and the scope comes, I'll give you another update on it. I'm probably going to have to go to a shop to get these holes drilled because they have to be precisely in a line and spaced, and I don't have the means to do that here. Turn this around, get this stuff out of the way. You can see that this lock is inletted and it fits fairly well. I've got to polish all this, and I intend to fire blue this. That hammer is dark because I had to bend it. It now needs to be repolished. That little screw needs to be polished. The hammer screw, the lock bolt, and the 4 screws that hold the innards on the lock. The tips of those need to be polished, and all that's going to be fire blued. So we should have some contrast, and it should be really pretty. The other thing is, and I don't know how many of y'all build guns like I do, but indoor finishes for like furniture and stuff do not work real well on guns if you're going to be out in the weather a lot. The UV rays, they just fade away. I've tried several brands and never had much luck with them. So I use Fiebing's leather dye, and you can buy any number of colors and mix them together to create the color that you want. Now this is going to be kind of a reddish brown color when I'm done, and we'll just see how that turns out. Okay, going on to other things. Now this, like I said before, this rifle is 44 caliber. Now that's not exactly the same as 44 special, because I think the groove diameter on those rifles is 429. This is 430. It's still 44. And actually, what you can do, you could buy 44 special lead bullets from Hornady, the swatched ones, and push them right down the barrel. It takes a little effort, but once you get them started, then they go right down the barrel just fine. But they're kind of a pain. So the better choice is to, let me grab these here. There we go. Is to order a mold. Now this mold here came from England. It's a little brass mold, and it's a round bowl mold. Now this is 417 diameter, and it takes a 10,000th muslin patch. And he put a sprue cutter on this thing for me, which he normally doesn't do, but I asked him for that years and years and years ago. I've built quite a number of 44 caliber muzzleloading rifles over the years. The other mold I have, which is this is the one I want to give to my uncle. Here, let me turn this over to be easier to see. There's the bullet there. This is also 430, but the trouble with this mold for this gun, since this is a hunting rifle and not a match rifle, this would be a match rifle bullet, really, like for Schützen, the German Schützen match. And this is a custom mold that I had made, but you really need a guide starter or a false muzzle when you're using that style bullet. Now, you're probably asking, what's a guide starter? Okay, so let me grab a few things here off this other table. So here's the accoutrements for guide starter. Now here's your guide starter itself, and this is for another rifle. This is for a match rifle that I have, and it's old. It's been around forever, and it still works fine. But you see this bore in it. This bore is .430, and then on this end it's bored to the muzzle diameter of the rifle. So now, of course, it's